cells, and that is very intuitive. If you have more MPP, you would guess that you would have less bigger cells. So there's another study here by Boyd and Bonnet, in which they looked at N2 fixation, so another runtime functional group, and fixers in the ocean in 2002 with a previous version of the NCAR geochemical model. And they show here that with climate change and with warming at the surface, you have here more N2 fixation. So we start to look at the relative proportion of those different phytocarbon groups. Few words on ocean acidification now and changes in pH. So I don't know if you mentioned that already yesterday. Not at all. Maybe. So maybe I skip the introduction part. So the ocean is absorbing anthropogenic carbon, mostly in the North Atlantic here, but also in the Southern Ocean, in the Pacific. And of course, this changes the chemistry of the ocean. And when you have more CO2 into the water, you have more bicarbonate ion, but less carbonate ion. And it's the less carbonate ion that will impact classification, because it's here. Because of course, when an organism calcifies, it uses calcium ions here and carbonate to form calcite or aragonite. So a way to look at this acidification is to look at the horizon saturation of calcite and aragonite. I don't know if you're familiar with these concepts here. In a few words, the ocean is split into two big parts. The surface of the ocean is oversaturated in regards to aragonite or to calcite, which has two forms of CaCO3. And you have an horizon saturation, and below the horizon, you are undersaturated in regards to aragonite or calcite. And so what the increasing CO2 will do in the ocean is, of course, increasing CO2, decreasing pH, decreasing carbonate ion, and it will show the horizon saturation. So you will end up with a much larger volume of undersaturated waters compared to oversaturated waters. And of course, in undersaturated waters, the skeletons, the shells, start to dissolve just chemically. So this is an interesting result from Dick Phil et al. In 2004, published in Science. They were basically computing the depths of the horizon saturation today and in the past to try to show if the saturation depths have changed with the increasing CO2. So you have so that's the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian, three sections here. In color, you have anthropogenic carbon, which is only a small part of total dissolved inorganic carbon, but you clearly see the penetration of anthropogenic carbon, mostly in the North Atlantic here, but also in the Pacific and in the Indian Ocean. And here you have two curves. The plain curve here in red is today's or present horizon saturation for aragonite. In white, it's for calcite. So separating oversaturated waters here and undersaturated waters here. And the dotted or dashed line here are the horizon saturations for pre-industrial states. So basically, they've estimated anthropogenic carbon. They removed the anthropogenic carbon from the total carbon, and they recomputed the horizon saturation just with the natural carbon. And they were showing that the horizon saturation has already shown by as much as a few hundred meters in the Southern Ocean, in the North Pacific also. So now if I turn to projections, one of the first papers is the one by Wolf Lagroeta in 1999, using this business as usual scenario here, increasing CO2 in the atmosphere. And that's for the surface ocean. He was showing that if you increase CO2 from 280 to 650 here, pH will decrease by 0.4 units. So that's a huge change in pH at the surface ocean. But if you look at carbonate ion concentrations, it's even worse because you go from, that's the axis for carbonate ion, you go from 250 here to maybe 125. So it's a decrease by 50% of the carbonate ion concentration at the surface of the ocean. So what does that mean on the vertical? That's a plot from the paper by Jim Orr et al. In 2005. That's the situation in '94 from the data. So same plots than in Phil et al. That I just showed. Penetration of anthropogenic carbon in the Atlantic and in the Pacific, and showing of the horizon saturation here in the Southern Ocean and in the northern Atlantic here. And that's the situation in 2100 for two scenarios. So we have, of course, much more anthropogenic carbon in the ocean. And look at the showing of the horizon saturation. We are here in the North Atlantic. You go from 3,000, that's for our regulate, you go from 3,000 meters to maybe 2,700 meters in 1994. And then in the next decades, if the CO2 increases as in those scenarios, we have an horizon saturation maybe at a few hundred meters or even a few tens of meters here in 2100. And what was Jim Orr showing also is that this horizon saturation could reach the surface of the ocean in the Southern Ocean and also in the North Pacific. So we could have undersaturated waters all over the water column from the surface to the tip of the ocean. So that was all scenarios with all the models. What do the new STEMIP 5 models tell us? Again, the same approximately 8 models here, and that's the changes in pH from 1850 to 2100 here for two different scenarios, the RCP 8.5 and the RCP 4.5. And then even for those two scenarios, we have extensions up to 2300 here. So what you can see from that is that all models, they project a consistent decrease in pH from all the STEMIP 5 models. You have three regions here, the Arctic in dark blue, the Southern Ocean in light blue, and the tropics in red. And this decrease in pH will be higher in the Arctic and in the Southern Ocean than in the tropics. Maybe the last part from the STEMIP 5 models is the following. In the tropics, we are far at the surface, again, we are far away from undersaturation, which is not the case in the Arctic or in the Southern Ocean. And you see here that in the RCP 8.5 scenario, we cross the threshold of aragonite undersaturation in the middle of this century for the Arctic, maybe even like in 2020, 2030, depending on the model. And we even reached the calcite undersaturation at the surface in the Arctic before the end of the century. So these results are quite consistent with what we had in the previous simulations. Of course, this has strong implications on calcification and trophic food webs in those polar regions, especially because of the impact on calcifications. Another impact that has not been studied so far is the fact that this acidification will increase maybe the ratios of carbon to nitrogen in the organic matter. And this can change the food quality in all the trophic food webs. So that's another kind of impact of acidification.
All results were in the organic 5, I mean,
yeah.
So the biology didn't make any difference.
But for that, biology doesn't make any difference. Even so in those previous results, basically there were no real biogeochemical models. The biogeochemical models were very simple, just geochemical models basically, but embedded in full logician. And if you look at these results here, it's quite similar to what we had in OPIM 5. Maybe if you look at the year at which you cross the threshold, you have some differences between models that may be due to the fact that the way they represent the carbonate cycle. But this is second order. Okay, a few words on oxygen and deoxygenation, or desoxygenation, I don't know how to say it in English. Deoxygenation, we see, sometimes you see both. Deoxygenation, okay. So this deoxygenation business, it's quite recent, but in fact it was already mentioned quite a while ago by Sarmiento in 1998. At that time they were copying a geochemical model in the ocean with the climate model, and they were looking at the response of the ocean carbon cycle to anthropogenic warming. But that's the last paragraph of this paper in Nature in 1998, and at that time already he was mentioning a global mean decrease of oxygen between 1990 and 2065 in one scenario, with at a depth of 1600 meters here in the Southern Ocean, large regions with large decrease of more than 20 millimolar. So this was identified quite a while ago. And over the past years, there have been a few O2-focused studies with coupled climate biochemical models. And those models, they show large ocean deoxygenation with global warming, mostly at high and mid latitudes, and changes that are mostly driven by ocean dynamics and physics, and also by warming because you reduce So why do we care about oxygen? You've seen maybe those curves, and Marcus mentioned oxygen in ozone, I guess. And of course, the two main reasons why we focus on oxygen is because of the role in the oxygen of denitrification and then on N2O production. And the other strong role here is, of course, the impact on ecosystems. And in the Keeling et al. Paper, that's a review paper on ocean deoxygenation, published in 2010, you have this figure showing the median lethal oxygen concentrations for animals here from crustacea, fishes, bivalve, and gastropoda. And you see the concentrations here, we are between maybe 20-30 here up to 50-60. So that are the numbers we'll be looking at in the coming years. So that's the Equator Pacific oxygen minimum zone. We are at, I think, 400 meters here. And you see the numbers, 10, 20, 30, that are even lower than what we had on the previous plots. So clearly, some of these animals, they avoid being in those oxygen minimum zones. And what Strama was showing in 2008 with the data here from the beginning of the 60s to today is an extension on the vertical on this oxygen minimum zone in the tropics. That's the deep point, so it's here almost in the core of these oxygen minimum zones. So the 60 micromolar limit here is showing at the top of the OMZ, and it's deepening at the bottom of the OMZ. So you have an extension in volume of the OMZ. That's what the data tell us. So I have to say that there are not so many data points here. So to get this picture here, we need lots of interpolation, extrapolation of the existing data. So this is partly still discussed in the community. So what do the models tell us on the evolution of O2 in the ocean with climate change? So they, as I was mentioning, they simulate deoxygenation in response to climate change. I show you an early results that we obtained some time ago with the simple models. You have, that's the O2 flux to the atmosphere. So in pre-industrial times, you're equilibrated, you don't lose oxygen, you don't gain oxygen from the ocean. And with climate change, you start to lose oxygen to the atmosphere in the 21st century. And in 2100, the decrease in oxygen content for the entire ocean is between -1 and -7%, depending on the different models. So that's the previous generation of models. And the mechanisms, again, decreased O2 solubility everywhere at the surface, of course. And we have also circulation changes and stratification that will amplify this solubility response. And if you quantify those two drivers here, it's maybe 25% due to the solubility and up to 3/4 due to circulation changes and stratification. So the new models, the new simplified models, they tell us basically the same story. That's the changes in O2 content of the ocean under the RCP 8.5 scenario. And that's a relative changes, of course, then you can put all the models on the same graph. And again, the same 8 models here that I had, 7 models that I had at the time. And they all show this clear decrease in oxygen with climate change and with global warming. You have one outlier here that I still don't know how to explain, but I hope I will be able in a few weeks. That's one of our versions, so we hope that's the work on that. So, of course, that's very consistent, decrease in the oxygen content of the ocean. When you turn to the 2D views, so that's oxygen, so at the surface it's very similar because they warm everywhere, increase oxygen everywhere at the surface, that's not very interesting. What's interesting is to look at what happens in the main thermocline. So here we're between 100 and 600 meters, and we look at changes in O2 between the end of the century and 2005 from the same 7 models under the RCP 8.5 scenarios. And again, I've used these hatched regions to show where more than 75, maybe 80% of the models agree on the sign of change. And you have a very clear response in the North Pacific, the North Atlantic, and the Southern Ocean. All models show much less oxygen at subsurface with climate change, that mostly a response to changes in circulation, ventilation, and stratification. In the tropics, signals are less clear, with even more oxygen in the Indian and the Atlantic Ocean, and this seems to be a consistent response across all the models. We have more oxygen between 100 and 600 meters here in the region. there's one thing